Hey there, welcome to our little desk side chat that we're having with you. We've been carrying on for the last couple of weeks. We are video number 33 in this whole series. Can you believe it? If you were to watch a video every single day, you would last well into a month, extra month.
There you go.
So anyway, do the math on that one.
Yeah.
I apparently didn't before I said this. So anyways, Wednesday we saw Jesus explaining to the Pharisees their need to see themselves as undone. Unable to hold to the perfection of God. And we saw Jesus confronting them on that to that end.
You know, James addresses this same problem that Jesus Christ was confronting with the Pharisees in chapter 4. And in James 4:1 it says this, "From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lust that war in your members?" In other words, James is telling these believers that the struggles that they deal with often originate inside of yourselves. In other words, you guys are dealing, this is what Jesus was telling those Pharisees, you're dealing with struggles that actually come up because of your flesh.
And then he points them to the process of getting their hearts to the right place. It is a process. You know, we talked about progressive sanctification. That's what it's about, is being a Christian and continually growing. And this study in James is a great place to look for that. So if you're looking for a study, if you maybe just finished up something or you're looking for a new study to get into, James chapter 4 verses 6 through 10, but just James 4 in general is a good starting place for that. Because we see in verses 6 through 10, James lays out the answer to this question that was posed in verse 1. When he says in verse 6, "But he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resists the proud, but gives grace unto the humble."
You know, then James goes on and tells us that anytime that you're willing to humble yourself before God, that God will then add grace to help you handle any situation. You know, it's been said, the interesting thing about humility is the second that you think you've got it, you lost it. Because a person must submit or give his will over to God in order to be able to walk with God. You know, in verse 7 it says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you."
So this humility can only come as we submit ourselves to the will of God and to the work that we desire to God to do in our lives. And where the Pharisees oftentimes failed is they had no desire to do that. They thought that they could in and of themselves possess the righteousness. And obviously they completely lacked humility. And verse 8 says, "Draw nigh to God and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners. Purify your hearts, ye double-minded." And we see that when it came to humility, the Pharisees were the farthest thing from it.
And yet God still offers to draw nigh to any child that would draw nigh to him. You know, God also will allow his child to go through deep water. Oftentimes he does this to bring us to the place that we need to be so that we can see ourselves in the light of who God is. We see this in the prophet Isaiah, when Isaiah saw himself in the light of God, and Isaiah said, "Woe is me, for I am undone." He saw himself as not living up to the standard of the perfection of God. And he says, I am a man of unclean lips. And he says, "And I live and I dwell amongst a people of unclean lips." You know, sometimes God brings us to this place to demonstrate to us our need. In James chapter 4, verse 9, he says, "Be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness." In other words, there's times when God uses these struggles and these trials in our lives to bring us to himself. So we should allow God to do those things, because when we see ourselves in the light of who God is, it just demonstrates to us this gargantuan need that each one of us has.
And so humility is kind of the key to all of this, is humbling ourselves, as he says in verse 10, "Humble yourselves in the sight of God, and he shall lift you up." That's what the Pharisees didn't quite understand, is that it wasn't about trying to portray this idea of perfection in and of themselves, but relying on God and humbling myself before God so that he will lift me up. And that's really what it boils down to. So.
And then, you know, what better thing could you do to fulfill the calling of God, to be lifted up in the eyes of men by Jesus Christ himself, and to have Jesus Christ be the one who's exalted and lifted up through all these things. So great to go through these things. Tremendous. We're looking forward to jumping a little bit more into this next week. So get back with us next week, and we'll see you on Monday. Have a great day.
See ya.